Imagine losing your sight, not because medicine had no answer, but because the answer had not been invented yet. For millions of people suffering from cataracts, the world could slowly disappear. Faces became shadows, letters became impossible to read, colors began to fade, and eventually ordinary life could become a blur. But in the United States, during a time when black women were fighting to be taken seriously in medicine, one young doctor began asking a question that would eventually change the history of eye surgery. Her name was Patricia Bath. She was a black physician, an ophthalmologist, a scientist, and an inventor. But her story did not begin inside a laboratory. It began in Harlem. Patricia Era Bath was born in Harlem, New York, in 1942. She grew up during a period when opportunities for black Americans were still heavily restricted by discrimination. But her family encouraged education. Her father, Rupert Bath, was one of the first black motormen and conductors for the New York City subway system. Her mother, Gladys, had worked as a domestic worker and encouraged her children to pursue education. From an early age, Patricia became fascinated by science. She wanted to understand how things worked, and eventually she discovered something that would shape the rest of her life. Medicine could change people's lives. But medicine was not always equally available to everyone. That realization would become central to her career. Because Patricia Bath would eventually discover that the battle against blindness was not only about technology, it was also about access. She studied at Hunter College in New York and later attended Howard University College of Medicine. She graduated from Howard in 1968. Then came medical training. And this was where another part of her story became important. Bath entered medicine as a black woman at a time when the medical profession remained overwhelmingly dominated by white men. She encountered racial and gender discrimination throughout her career, but instead of allowing those barriers to define her future, she used them as motivation. While working in New York and later in Los Angeles, Bath began noticing something that deeply disturbed her. Blindness was not affecting every community equally. Poor and underserved communities were experiencing preventable vision loss at much higher rates, and many people who needed eye care simply did not have access to it. Bath began asking a bigger question. What if blindness was not only a medical problem? What if it was also a social problem? What if where someone lived and how much money they had could determine whether they could see? That question would eventually lead her toward a completely different approach to medicine. In the 1970s, Bath moved to California and became involved with UCLA. There, she helped establish an ophthalmology residency program at UCLA's Jules Stein Eye Institute. She also became the first woman faculty member in the institute's ophthalmology department. But she noticed something troubling. Black patients were suffering from blindness at higher rates. Bath investigated the issue. She became convinced that underserved communities needed better access to eye care. So she helped develop a new field she called community ophthalmology. The idea was simple: don't wait for people to come to the hospital after losing their vision. Bring eye care into communities, find people at risk, screen them, treat them. Prevent blindness whenever possible. But Bath wasn't satisfied with prevention alone. She wanted to improve treatment, and that would require invention. One of the major causes of blindness around the world was cataracts. A cataract occurs when the eye's natural lens becomes cloudy. Instead of light passing clearly through the lens, vision becomes blurred. Colors can become faded. Objects become difficult to recognize, and severe cataracts can cause profound vision loss. Cataract surgery already existed, but Bath believed laser technology could make the process more precise. She began developing an idea for a new surgical device. It would combine laser technology with cataract surgery. The goal was to remove cataracts more efficiently while reducing trauma to the eye. The idea became known as the Laserphaco Probe. But having an idea was only the beginning. The hardest part was proving that it could work. Bath spent years researching and developing the technology. The challenge was enormous. She needed to understand ophthalmology. She needed to understand lasers. She needed engineering knowledge. And she needed access to equipment capable of testing the concept. During the development process, Bath traveled internationally to continue her research and gain access to laser technology. The technology took years to develop. This wasn't a sudden moment of inspiration followed by instant success. It was years of research, experimentation, failure, improvement, and persistence. Eventually, Bath developed the Laserphaco Probe. The device used laser energy to help remove cataracts and restore vision. And in 1988, her invention received a United States patent. Patent number 4,744,360. Patricia Bath became the first black woman physician to receive a U.S. patent for a medical invention. Think about what that meant. A black woman who had entered medicine during an era of enormous racial and gender barriers had now created something new, not just an idea, not just a theory. An invention recognized by the United States patent system, but the patent wasn't the end. A patent is a victory, but it isn't the same thing as changing the world. For that, an invention has to become useful. Bath continued working on her technology. Her goal was bigger than recognition. She wanted people to see. She wanted people who had been left behind by the healthcare system to receive treatment. She believed strongly in the idea that eyesight was a basic human right. Her work wasn't limited to technology. She also continued advocating for community-based eye care. That mattered because Bath understood something many inventors overlook. A medical breakthrough means little if the people who need it cannot access it. Technology must reach patients. Medicine must reach communities. And healthcare must reach people who have historically been excluded. Bath's work, therefore, had two connected sides. One side was invention, the other was access. The Laserphaco Probe represented technological innovation. Community ophthalmology represented social innovation, and Patricia Bath believed both were necessary. Because saving someone's vision wasn't only about creating a better instrument. It was about making sure the patient could actually reach the doctor holding that instrument. There is another reason Patricia Bath's story matters. She wasn't simply trying to invent something difficult. She was doing it while navigating institutions where black women were often underestimated. Throughout her career, she faced racism and sexism. But there is something remarkable about her response. She didn't simply fight to enter the room. She changed what could happen inside the room. She became a physician, a professor, a researcher, an inventor, and an advocate. Each achievement challenged assumptions about who belonged in science, who belonged in medicine, and who was capable of creating new technology. Her existence in those spaces was itself a challenge to old expectations. But her inventions made the argument even stronger. It is easy to remember the Laserphaco Probe. It is harder to remember the person who spent years developing it. Patricia Bath wasn't simply interested in creating a device. She was interested in restoring independence. Think about what vision means: seeing your child's face, reading a letter, walking through your neighborhood, recognizing someone you love, reading a book, working. Living without depending on someone else for every movement. Sight is more than biology. It is freedom. And that is why Bath's work mattered so much to her. She wasn't chasing technology for technology's sake. She was trying to give people something back, something they had lost, or something they were in danger of losing: their vision. In 1988, Patricia Bath's Laserphaco Probe received its U.S. patent. That moment represented more than a technical achievement. It was a historic milestone. She became the first black woman physician to receive a U.S. patent for a medical invention. But the achievement came after years of work, years of research, years of resistance, years of being underestimated, and years of believing that a problem could be solved even when the solution did not yet exist. Her story is a reminder that innovation rarely happens overnight. Behind every breakthrough is usually a long period when the idea looks impossible. Someone has to keep going during that period. Bath did. Patricia Bath continued working in medicine and advocating for eye health throughout her life. She received numerous honors for her contributions. Her achievements eventually earned recognition from institutions dedicated to science, medicine, and invention. But perhaps the most important part of her legacy is not the awards. It is the people who can see because someone refused to accept that blindness was inevitable. It is the researchers who followed, the doctors who learned, the communities that gained access to eye care, and the generations of young black girls who could look at Patricia Bath and see something different, not a patient, not an assistant. Not someone standing behind the inventor, but the inventor herself, a doctor who created, a scientist who challenged, a woman who refused to accept the limits placed around her. Patricia Bath died in 2019, but her invention remains part of the history of ophthalmology and medical innovation, and her story leaves us with a question. How many ideas disappear because the person who has them is never given the opportunity to develop them? How many discoveries are delayed because someone is told they don't belong? How many brilliant minds never reach the laboratory? Patricia Bath's story gives us one answer. Sometimes the person who changes medicine isn't the person everyone expects. Sometimes innovation comes from someone standing outside the traditional system, someone who sees a problem everyone else has learned to live with and simply refuses to accept it. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine a world without sight. The room disappears, faces disappear, words disappear, colors disappear. Now imagine someone telling you that nothing can be done. That blindness is simply your fate. Patricia Bath refused to accept that answer. She looked at blindness and saw a problem that could be attacked. She looked at inequality and saw something that could be challenged. She looked at a medical system that underestimated her and became an inventor anyway. Her name was Patricia Bath, a black doctor, a scientist, a pioneer. And the inventor behind the Laserphaco Probe. She didn't simply ask whether medicine could do more. She spent years proving that it could. And perhaps that is the most powerful part of her story. Because sometimes history changes when someone looks at an impossible problem and decides someone has to try. Fade to black. Patricia Bath, 1940 to 2019. A doctor who refused to let blindness have the final word.